When a man gets left by a woman he deeply cared for, the first instinct is always self-blame. The mind starts replaying every moment, every conversation, every decision, trying to find the one flaw that broke everything. You start asking yourself, was I not enough? Was I not attractive enough, successful enough, attentive enough, fun enough? This is where heartbreak becomes dangerous, not because she left, but because you start believing a lie. Most women don't leave because the man wasn't enough. They leave because somewhere along the way he stopped being the version of himself that attracted her in the beginning. No one enters a relationship with a man she believes is weak, insecure, lost, or emotionally dependent. She chose you because she saw your strength, your confidence, your ambition, your presence. But life slowly chips away at a man. Responsibilities, stress, routine, disappointments, sacrifices over time. You start handing pieces of yourself away without noticing. You start focusing so much on giving love that you forget to give it to yourself. The man who had a mission becomes a man who has only a relationship. The man who chased goals becomes a man who chases her. The man who valued himself becomes a man who seeks validation from someone else. And that shift kills attraction deeper than any mistake you could have made. Women don't leave when the relationship has problems. They leave when they no longer recognize the man they once admired. It might look like she walked out because you didn't communicate enough, didn't show enough affection, didn't pay enough attention, or didn't fix something fast enough. But underneath all of that is one simple truth. She wasn't following a man anymore. She was carrying one. She didn't feel protected, desired, inspired, or led. She started feeling emotionally alone even while lying next to you. And the saddest part is that most men don't notice the shift until she's gone. That's how emotional drift works: slow, silent, invisible until it's irreversible. So when she finally leaves, you see it as rejection. But in reality, it's a reflection. It forces you to look in the mirror and see what you stopped being. You didn't lose her the day she walked out. You began losing her the day you stopped being the man life was trying to shape you into. Breakups are not just emotional endings, they are identity alarms. They remind you that somewhere on your journey you dropped your confidence, your boundaries, your mission, your energy, your direction. You started valuing her more than yourself. You started waiting for her to tell you what you meant instead of knowing your worth internally. That imbalance destroys the dynamic between masculine and feminine immediately. A woman can love a man deeply, but she cannot respect a man who has abandoned his own identity. And once respect disappears, attraction follows right behind it. But here's the powerful truth: the man she left is not the man you must remain. Pain gives you clarity, loss gives you awareness, heartbreak forces you to rebuild yourself brick by brick, habit by habit, intention by intention. And when you start rebuilding, you realize something amazing. Your value never disappeared. You just stopped showing it. You stopped living it. You stopped honoring it. And that is why losing her becomes a turning point. It pushes you back to the path you were meant to walk. It forces you to reclaim the version of yourself she once fell for, and even better, the version she never had the chance to meet. And once you become that man again, whether she returns or not no longer defines your story, because that path leads to a life that is yours, not based on who stayed or left, but based on who you chose to become. When she walks away, most men immediately look outward at her actions, her silence, her decisions, her new behavior. But the real transformation begins when you stop asking, why did she leave? And start asking, what is life trying to teach me? Because every heartbreak has a lesson hidden inside it. And until you learn it, you repeat the same emotional patterns in every future relationship. A breakup is not just the end of love, it is the beginning of self awareness. It is the moment when you are finally forced to sit with your thoughts, your mistakes, your fears, the parts of your personality you ignored, and the version of yourself you outgrew without realizing. When a woman leaves, the first instinct is to chase, fix, convince, prove, and fight. But all these reactions come from a place of emotional panic, not clarity. They come from not wanting to face the silence, because silence forces you to confront the truth. Somewhere along the way, you disconnected from yourself long before she disconnected from you. This self reconnection is not about blame, it's about understanding. Maybe you became too available. Maybe you stopped respecting your own boundaries. Maybe you poured so much into her that you left nothing for yourself. Or maybe you expected her to do the emotional work you were afraid to do. Whatever the reason, The silence after a breakup gives you the space to analyze your life without distraction. For the first time in a long time, you hear your own thoughts without someone else validating or rejecting them. You start to notice the areas of your life where you settled, where you became passive, where you stayed comfortable instead of growing. You see the moments where you reacted emotionally instead of responding with clarity and confidence. And slowly, the breakup stops looking like rejection and starts looking like education, a painfully honest one, but the kind that changes you at the core. The truth is, relationships end when growth stops. Either one person evolves and the other doesn't, or both stop evolving together. When she leaves, life is presenting you with an opportunity most men never take, the chance to level up spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and personally. This is the moment where your character is tested. Do you fall apart and stay there, or do you rebuild yourself? Situation changes. The breakup stops being the worst thing that happened to you. It becomes the catalyst that unlocked the next version of you. The version that is more focused, more confident, more grounded, more purposeful. Eventually, you realize something powerful. You may have been hurt, but you were not destroyed. She may have left, but life did not. And the person you become through this transformation will not only attract better relationships, but also a better life. That is the real win, becoming the man who doesn't just survive heartbreak, but rises because of it. When she walks away and you choose silence, something unexpected happens not just in her world, but in yours. The silence that once felt like punishment slowly becomes a form of power. You start realizing that the breakup doesn't only affect her emotions, it rearranges your emotional landscape too. In the beginning, you may feel lost, angry, confused, abandoned, or even betrayed. But as the days pass and your phone stays quiet, your mind begins to clear. The emotional fog that kept you reacting instead of thinking starts to lift. And for the first time in a long time, you begin to see your role in the story, not as a victim, but as a man rediscovering his identity. You realize that before she walked away, maybe you stopped being the man you were proud of. Maybe you started living for approval instead of purpose. Maybe you began chasing reassurance instead of maintaining standards. The silence forces you to face the truth without excuses. And even though that truth burns, it also frees you. You start noticing that you don't miss her as much as you miss yourself, the confident, grounded, centered version of you that existed before the relationship became imbalanced. Slowly, that realization becomes the first spark of empowerment. When communication stopped, you had no choice but to deal with what you feel instead of distracting yourself with attempts to fix the situation. This inner confrontation changes you in ways you never expected. Emotional discipline begins where emotional chaos ends. You learn that you can survive discomfort. You learn that you don't need constant validation to feel valuable. You learn that love should enhance your life, not define whether your life has worth. And with this awakening comes a powerful shift. You start taking your energy back. Instead of spending your days waiting for her to notice your absence, you begin investing in your growth. You start working out again, not to win her back, but to rebuild your strength. You start focusing on your goals, your finances, your passions, your inner peace. You begin enjoying your own company again. The irony is profound. The same silence that once felt like a curse becomes the tool that rebuilds your foundation. It forces you to remember the man you were before you started compromising too much. Heartbreak becomes less about what you lost and more about what you are finally taking ownership of. And while all this transformation is happening within you, she feels something equally powerful. She starts noticing that your silence is not a strategy, it's not manipulation, it's not a temporary reaction, it's growth. When she realizes you're no longer chasing, pleading, or trying to prove your worth, that changes the emotional dynamic completely. No woman forgets the man who suddenly stops needing her approval. No woman ignores the shift when the man she once took for granted becomes of the man she starts wondering about again. While she is calculating your absence, you are recalibrating your life. While she is thinking about whether she should reach out, you are thinking about who you are becoming. While she is emotionally reacting, you are emotionally evolving. This difference is what turns silence from insecurity into strength. You are no longer waiting for someone to come save the relationship. You are saving yourself. That alone changes everything. Because once a man learns to stand on his own, to control his emotions, to be grounded in his identity, he becomes the kind of man who doesn't fear losing anyone. And the man who doesn't fear losing anyone is the man women fear losing the most. In the end, the silence doesn't just hurt her, it transforms you. Chat GPT said when she walked away and expected you to come running, there was a belief in her mind that she still held the emotional power. She believed you would chase, explain, convince, negotiate, or try to fix everything just to keep her in your life. That's the dynamic most men fall into, reacting out of fear rather than responding from strength. But when you choose silence grounded in evolution rather than ego, everything changes. It forces her to sit in her own decision without the comfort of your attention. At first, she may feel proud, relieved, or even confident that you will eventually break. She might think, he's just letting me breathe, he'll message soon. But when silence continues, when days turn into weeks, and she hears nothing from you, not even a moment of emotional weakness, her internal narrative begins to shift. She starts to ask herself questions she never expected to ask. Was the breakup really the right decision? Why isn't he chasing me? Why isn't he trying to fix things? Did I overestimate my importance in his world? Doubt grows in the space where attention used to exist. Because whether she admits it or not, silence exposes something she hoped would never surface, the possibility that you might not have needed her as much as she assumed. Women are deeply tuned into emotional feedback. When she pushes away and you chase, it confirms she has control. But when she pushes away and you remain grounded, calm, and silent, it signals something far more powerful. You have control over yourself. That realization stings more than silence itself. She begins to compare the situation to past experiences. Maybe other men had begged, folded quickly, or shown emotional dependence. Maybe she always felt she could return whenever she wanted. But this time, she is met with something different: stillness, composure, growth. She begins to feel the absence not just of your presence, but of the emotional validation she used to draw from you. This is where the real emotional shift begins. She starts replaying memories, rereading old messages, noticing small things she didn't appreciate before. She remembers how supportive you were, how consistently you showed up, how much effort you gave. And the more she reflects, the more she feels the weight of contrast. She expected you to weaken. Instead, she sees signs that you are becoming stronger without her. While she hoped the breakup would temporarily shake you, she is forced to confront the possibility that it woke you up instead. This realization creates emotional tension inside her, because when a woman realizes a man is not chasing, she has to confront herself, her decisions, her emotional impulses, and her role in why things ended. Silence turns the mirror around. She begins to feel the distance not as rejection, but as consequence. And that consequence becomes uncomfortable as time passes. Women rarely regret their decision immediately. They regret it when reality catches up. When they see the man they walked away from rising instead of collapsing. When they see you refocusing on your life, your goals, your growth, your value. Your absence becomes the message she never expected to receive. And the more she realizes that your silence isn't a strategy but a decision, the emotional power dynamic reverses. She begins to understand that you're no longer waiting to be chosen. You're choosing yourself. And once a woman senses that a man has chosen himself over her approval, that's when doubt, curiosity, and eventually regret begin to grow. Because deep down, every woman knows one universal truth: the man who can walk away without bitterness is the man who didn't lose anything. He just rediscovered his worth. When your silence is real, not a performance, she starts to feel the shift in a way she never expected. Because silence is not just the absence of words, it is the presence of self control, emotional maturity, and self respect. And women feel that. They notice when you are quiet but still emotionally tied to them, obsessing, waiting, hoping. But they also notice when your silence comes from a deeper place, when you have stopped responding, not because you are trying to punish her, but because you are reclaiming your life. This is the type of silence that hits her harder than anything you could ever say. It is the silence of a man who no longer needs her validation to feel worthy. And the moment she realizes that something powerful happens, she begins watching. She watches your online activity. She watches your growth. She watches how quickly you recover, not from ego, but from purpose. She compares the man you used to be with the man you are becoming. She begins to understand that losing you might have cost her more than she thought. And here's the psychological truth. When someone feels they may have lost something valuable forever, their mind starts to replay the moments where they could have acted differently. She starts to review the relationship not from her initial emotional mindset, but from clarity. She remembers the moments you stood by her, the patience you gave, the consistency you provided, and she also begins to see where she may have taken you for granted. That regret comes slowly but heavily. While she's reflecting, you appear to be moving, not reacting, not waiting, moving. And even if you are still healing inside, even if there is pain, your actions show something else that you are facing forward, not backwards. She sees you becoming more focused, more disciplined, more centered. Maybe you are spending more time improving your body, your finances, your career, your confidence. Maybe you are exploring passions you put aside while trying to fix things. Maybe you are growing in ways she never inspired, but the breakup did. And in the real world, growth forces people to reconsider their assumptions. She expected you to fall apart. Instead, you became better. This shift destabilizes the narrative she had after leaving. If she thought she could replace you easily, she now begins to understand that men like you are not common. If she assumed you'd stay stuck, she now sees that the breakup may have been the best thing to happen to you. And that realization brings an uncomfortable question into her mind. If he can level up like this without me, what would he become with someone who appreciates him? The thought is where fear begins, the fear of being replaced by a better, more aligned woman, not because you are trying to make her jealous, but because life naturally pushes a man who focuses on himself into new opportunities. The irony is that your silence becomes louder than words. It sends a message without sending a message. It tells her that your world did not collapse when she left. It tells her you have become your own source of stability. And women respect men who are stable within themselves because a man who doesn't chase, who doesn't beg, who doesn't fold under emotional pressure is a man who understands his worth. She may not admit it publicly, but she respects you more now than she did while taking your presence for granted. And that respect often becomes the foundation for her curiosity, then her interest, and sometimes even her return. But here is the deeper truth: the return should never be your goal. The goal is to evolve regardless of what she decides, because the minute your growth depends on her reaction, you are still attached. True transformation is when you rise simply because you choose to. When she finally realizes that your silence comes from growth, not heartbreak, she understands something she never expected. You didn't lose her. She lost a version of you she never thought she would have to fight to keep. Sometimes her silence doesn't mean she is done with you. It means she is watching quietly from a distance, hoping you don't realize that she still cares. When a woman goes quiet after ignoring you, after leaving, after acting unbothered, it can confuse you. But in many cases, her silence is not about indifference. It is about pride, fear, and emotional conflict warring inside her. She may want to come back. She may want to reach out. She may want to say how much she misses the connection you once shared. But she stops herself, not because the feelings are gone, but because she's afraid of being vulnerable. The moment a woman realizes that your silence isn't a game, that you are not sitting there waiting for her message or checking her online status all day, she starts trying to balance two emotional realities: the one she shows the world and the one she can't hide from herself. That internal conflict hits her harder than she ever expected. Deep down, she hoped you would chase, that you would try harder, that you would prove she still had a hold on you. Most people want to feel wanted, especially after pulling back. But when you didn't break your silence, when you didn't rush in to restore the connection, something changed in her mind. She expected the breakup to feel empowering, freeing, emotionally satisfying, but instead she begins to feel the weight of your absence. She starts noticing how quiet her phone is. She starts wondering who you are talking to. She starts scanning for signs of your life without her. And every time she checks or thinks about you, she is forced to acknowledge that the emotional connection is still alive. That is a powerful realization for anyone, because once a person becomes aware that they still care, they must face what that means. At this point, she may begin replaying memories, not the fights or the problems, but the moments where you showed up for her, where you were consistent, where you cared in ways she now understands were rare. People often appreciate the truly valuable things only after distance gives them clarity. She begins remembering the little gestures, the support, the effort, and she may compare them to her current situation. Maybe no one is treating her with the same emotional maturity. Maybe conversations don't feel as deep. Maybe the attention she's receiving is surface level, low effort, or draining. And without you saying a word, she begins to realize something important. Losing someone who genuinely cared is not as easy to walk away from as she once believed. While she is processing all of this, your silence continues to speak. Your life is moving forward. You are growing, becoming more disciplined, more confident, more focused. Even if you still feel pain inside, you are directing that energy into your evolution rather than into chasing someone who walked away. She may not comment, she may not message, but she is observing. She notices if you look calmer, stronger, happier. She notices if you've stopped posting emotionally reactive content. She notices if you are investing in the man you want to become. And that is where the fear truly begins. Not fear of losing control, but fear of losing someone who might become deeply valuable to somebody else. Women respect men who stay grounded, not because they are cold or detached, but because they trust themselves. She sees you becoming that man. She sees you rising not to win her back, but because you chose yourself. And there is nothing more powerful, nothing more attractive than someone who heals instead of chases, someone who builds instead of breaks down, someone who grows instead of collapsing. In silence, she discovers a truth that words never could have shown her. You didn't lose yourself when she left. You found yourself, and that realization can be the very thing that makes her fear losing you more than you ever feared losing her.